colleagues here.
Hey guys. So first we'd like to thank Professor Gallot and Professor Kermadec for the very insightful presentation. So I'm Sophia BOCCANERA.
My name is Alina GISPERT.
And I am Marlene. Okay, so one second. Thank you. So first, this is a little agenda. First, I will be talking about the summary, like not of the presentation exactly, but of the text that we read. Then they will talk a bit about the debatable dimensions of the presentation and of the text. And finally, we'll have the session for open questions. So I'll be reading a bit because I don't want to miss a lot. Well, so as in social movements, in economics, women's work can also be very invisibilized. So I think it's for that reason that the first dimension that really called our attention was the idea of erasure. So here, I took the liberty of having some images of women protesting through time and space, and to illustrate the fact that women's involvement in social movements is not new at all. However, as well put by our professor, this participation is constantly forgotten and framed as new or extraordinary every time women heavily engaged in social activism. The invisibilization, I think you can go for that. The invisibilization and lack of recognition are constants in women's participation in social life, especially in the family sphere. So one way that Marxist feminists try to shed light on this issue is by defining family as a site of productive work that is largely carried out by women. So, but this definition has some limitations, and it's limited mainly by the wage-based activities. So in this context, the concept of reproductive work has gradually developed, and then I put this quote here, so from the text that I found that was really enlightening. So in this context, the concept of reproductive work was gradually developed to get emancipated from the dichotomy of productive and unproductive work, defined solely in terms of economic value. Well, and this is in the book that you guys saw, Mobilisé, Une histoire féministe de contestation populaire. My French is all that I had there. So, continue with the conclusion of the text. The definition of productive labor is not an easy one to achieve, as we saw. So much so that a question put by the book is exactly how social movements have contributed to the redefinition of what reproductive labor is. In this period, our professor identifies three main moments of the feminist movement that influenced the definition of reproductive work, especially the 60s, the 80s, and then the 2010s. However, despite the approach changes during the years, reproductive labor is still largely undervalued, especially in times of emergency, and that's what the article, more especially about the masks, I think brings up. And this highlights how women's work is largely used with no recognition. And the issue of recognition, I think, appears sometimes during the text, and I think our colleagues will also touch on that a bit. So, the question then is how women can fight and how women can organize against these exploitative tendencies that our professor put in the article. Yeah, he put it in the article. So, in this article, it explains how reproductive labor is not natural or timeless, but a socially constructed dimension tied to the patriarchy, capitalism, class, and racial domination. its invisibility in the GDP and national accounts, and how this reflects political ideologies, and women, especially from working class and racialized backgrounds, perform most of the reproductive labor, and how reproductive labor for itself, when productive workers redefine their labor as serving life and resistance, not capitalistic accumulation, can actually create a new and maybe an alternative for our current system. So, having these topics in mind, we will now move forward to a critical analysis of the text, focusing in two topics: the commodification of reproductive work and the redistribution, recognition, and representation issue. So,
all right, I will start now with dimension one, namely the topic of commodification of care work. Let me start by showing some graphs. No, they're not here. Okay, let's go. Okay, so I think we've all heard a lot about the gender pay gap, about the pension gap, about the difference in use of care time between the genders. So I thought maybe let's look at it from a different angle. I'm not sure if many people have seen it before or not. But this is what Clevin et al. Call the so-called motherhood penalty. And it refers to the average amount by which a woman's probability of being employed declines during the 10 years after she has had her first child. And I thought, like, to make it a bit more visual and a bit more personal, we're going to talk about ourselves. And you can see here in these graphs that if I had a child as an Austrian citizen, I could expect to be employed 10 years after with a declined probability of about minus 20%. If Alina from Argentina decides to have a child, it would also mean for her that she has a reduced probability of being employed of minus 45%, and for Sophia around minus 37%. And our potential dads of our children would, however, have a relative stable chance, which you can see on the green line here, which is everywhere around zero, of still being employed. I think this is only one angle to look at reproductive work, but I think it really shows how markets implicitly rely on unpaid reproductive work carried out by women. And the question we want to ask is whether commodification, so bringing this work into the market and valuing it financially and economically, could reduce the distribution of care work in a more just way, or whether actually it risks reinforcing capitalist and patriarchal dynamics. As cited also by Fanny Gallot, in the article there's André Goss, who opposes the commodification of domestic work because he thinks that essentially, like, if we put it on the market, we put it on the capitalist patriarchal market, and we will never be able to show the full value of the work. Then the article goes on to say that when we analyze reproductive work within the capitalist, patriarchal, and ethno-racialized economy, it allows us to understand a form of exploitation and to glimpse the foundations of an alternative society that challenges this logic. And you say in your article that it's already largely in place. And we were wondering, where is it in place? And maybe to discuss further what made these structures possible. We would love to discuss that further with all of you later, and so I want to give some more theoretical background on the commodification of reproductive work. And I want to start out on the next slide, there's Elizabeth Anderson's work. And in her 1990 book, she's saying that a commodity is defined as something to which norms of the market are appropriate for regulating its production, its exchange, and enjoyment. But then to value something differently than as a commodity is to recognize also a special intrinsic value. And to quote her directly, she's saying, when women's labor is treated as a commodity, the women who perform it are degraded. because essentially commodifying women's labor leads to exploitation of women exactly because we cannot value this intrinsic value that is not measurable in money. Another famous feminist philosopher, Martha Nussbaum, in Love's Knowledge, also says that there's no perfectly accurate market replacement for unpaid work, and she gives the example of childcare that a family member performs. It's maybe not perfect, I mean there's also solutions for this, but just to give some more theoretical background. Another guy who thought a lot about these topics is Christoph Herrmann, and he has 4 major objections to commodification, which I want to give you as like food of thought. And he's saying, okay, one reason we don't want to commodify is, okay, human beings shouldn't be sold. Okay, this is pure slavery. We can agree, I think. Second, not everything can be valued in units of money, only goods that are commensurable, so that we can have a common scale and measure it in money, for example. And he's saying, okay, maybe some things like personal goods, relations, also professional services like healthcare might not be commensurable. Thirdly, commodification can corrupt the value of certain goods. And he gives a very interesting example of blood markets. And in most countries, blood donation is for free. Like, people do it because they think it's morally good. But it's shown that in the US, for example, if there is a market for it, people will tend to give a lot less blood than if it's for free, because then the moral intrinsic value disappears. And fourthly, there's also specific markets, like the kidney market, that are just so bad in themselves that the outcome is so bad that we should just not commodify it. There are also like some societies where people are forced to sell their kidney in order to pay off a debt, which is never a good solution, I think. We also, one more time back, sorry. There's, we also want to highlight the other side and the weaknesses of this argumentation line, which is focus on this implicit assumption that is made behind this, which is that just because our market solutions are not good means that non-market solutions are better. And we want to also challenge that. How do we know that non-market norms are better than market norms? And is there maybe a way that by dismantling oppressive non-market norms, commodification could actually be liberating for women? This leads us to the final questions. The questions that we want to discuss with you guys and the whole group, namely, where do you already see these foundations of an alternative society? Outside the capitalist, patriarchal and ethno-racialized economy, what are the structures that make this alternative possible, and how would the transition phase to the state look like? And the second question is, under what conditions might non-market solutions provide more just and equitable outcomes than market-based ones? And where might market solutions actually challenge oppressive norms?
Okay, so for this second part, we are going to take some of the dimensions that you already discussed today about redistribution, recognition, and representation. I actually think that after our class this morning, there are maybe some things that I can see connect that I didn't see before, so I'm going to adapt to that. First, we're going to talk about redistribution. As we saw, we are in different crises, like a social crisis, economic crisis, and all these crises usually rely more on women for different factors. And one of the factors that we saw is how the organization of care work or reproductive work is distributed in the society. So for this, we are going to bring the diamond that is something that a lot of feminists from the Global South use, but it's actually not a Global South concept. But basically what they say is that care work is distributed across 4 sectors. So we have the private sector, the family, the community, and the public sector. For example, today, one of the things that you said in your presentation is that in this neoliberal context, when you see this word yesterday in English also, the state is not there anymore where they're supposed to be. So that relies in a more the people who can actually pay for care work in the private sector. Okay, of course they have problems, but people that cannot pay have to do more work in the family and inside the community, and that there are a lot of scholars that claim that distribution, because it's unjust, it's itself a vector of reproduction of this socioeconomic and gender inequality. So from this framework, we are going to see one specific case, that is this relation between global south and global north, because this hierarchy about how can we access to the care work is not only in the national level, we can also see in a transnational level. So one of the examples of this is the global care change in care work. Basically, generally women from the global south coming to the global north to take care of the kids of the women in the global north. So in that case, you live in the south, a lack of care that has to be solved in community or has to be solved for other members of the family. And also, in the global north, there are a lot of women that cannot have the time to take care, even if they want, to the children, because basically we are all every day more precarious and having a lot of working problems. So from this side, we would like to, one of the questions that we have is, okay, how in a state level we can find a solution that doesn't lead to these migrants in general that is caring with this care work to worse work conditions. So how can we handle this to start? But you're going to see the question at the end. And last one is about recognition, because something that called our attention is that during the whole test, and also something that you said today, and I also think that after the presentation I have another idea, that in general one of the problems of these, especially the host workers, is that they do not recognize themselves as workers. So they don't have this identity of community. And there's actually a lot of theories that say like, okay, so who used this concept? 2 sociologists, 2 activists, and basta. So it's not like a concept that is in the street. So in Argentina we have an association that is AMURRA, that is Association of Migrants, Refugees, and basically most of the women that are there also having this shock related with the domestic labor, and they believe that perceiving themselves as workers can help them to have better work conditions. And also here is one of the quotes of your text about how this identity is not something that you construct yourself, it's more like a social construction, and in that level also with the domestic work it's difficult because they are isolated and whatever, but we could see, you also quote Thompson that say that before the manufacturers were also isolated, but even then they were able to do like a big union. So okay, what could be the strategy now? So to close, I'm going to go with the 2 questions. The first is related with redistribution. So at the institutional level, taking into account that we are IPO, we are probably future policy makers, so we want to have like, okay, what we do with this, what could be a good policy to redistribute the care work without pushing informal workers into even more unstable employment? And for the other side, what community-based or educational initiatives have proven most effective in fostering collective identity and empowering workers to recognize themselves as labor right holders? Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for all these very interesting questions and this careful reading. You made one mistake, but it's on our side. It's because we didn't sign the last article, so you believe it's mine because not because I'm a man, but because I not signed the others. So individual work by Fanny, but the last one is the translation of the last chapter of our book that will be available in January normally, only in French. So it's half of it at least is from Fanny also. That was the main thing I wanted to say. So a lot of very interesting comments. So for commodification of reproductive work, is it a good idea or bad idea? That's one of the very important discussions. The answer is, of course, it depends. And this idea is very strong and very natural because we see things through the economy as the market. So actually, I could answer also, we don't care. It's not the important fact that it's commodified or not. It's something else that is interesting for us. Maybe to say things a bit more interesting, the idea is that commodification is one of the options of transformation, of social institutionalization of some kind of activity. And if there is a commodification, is that before it was organized differently. So family, individual organization is nothing natural. It's not that it was like that for thousands of years. Absolutely not. I don't know the name, but it's a German author that speaks about housewifization. So we produced housewives intensely. The state made that. Church, education helped. And it's been in the second part of the 20th century like a norm. So that was a transformation of the way housework were organized before, more communitary organization in the north. In the south it's not yet done, or maybe won't be ever. And it's been deorganized in part, this idea of the housewife, by different trends. One is participation to the job market for women. But another very strong one is development of social services, of public services. So that's one of the alternatives we say are already here. Most of us that have child can work because there is a public service that take care of the children for a very, very long time, for a lot of years. And yeah, so it frees us to work, so it takes in charge reproductive work in that meaning, and in addition it produces also intergenerational reproduction. So that's things that exist, and it's very clear that they are commodified now. So maybe the interesting part, at least for the North, again, all the discussion should be adapted, and we saw it completely in different situations, but in France in particular, in the global North, the main movements in this moment of the late neoliberalism is a strong attack against social services. So you tend to have commodification because those that are able to afford it will prefer the market. But of course, it means it's a very small part of it. So a large part has two options: to live with a partial service, so you are not anymore reproducing as well as before the labor power. So it means you have less hours where your children are taken care of, to take this example. So you need to come back faster from work, you're more tired, you go earlier to put them somewhere, you find other options. So that's a reduction of your, as a parent, labor power, but also a decrease in the qualitative production of the future labor power, because the children are less well educated, and maybe it's closer to the economic value. What's kept in the education is what is economically relevant, but it's not sure. And that's part of this idea of crisis of social reproduction. What seems like came in my mind today with our discussion is the far right movement that wants to reduce migrations, and we all heard about Trump's speech in the UN 2 days ago. This is the same idea, that it's reducing the ability to reproduce labor power in the US through migrations, we don't want Mexicans, even if it's labor power. So it's a strong contradiction for the development of capitalism and society in general. Yeah, so the idea is to try to see how, in different forms, reproductive work is already organized, and the market is a part of it, but a small part. So we have a lot of work organized differently. That's the idea. So the alternative society we could hope for, or already exists largely, is the way thousands and millions of people are working now outside of the market. It's challenged. Mainly the dynamics are to defend it, to maintain what already exists, but it could be also to move forward and to ask for more development of that, education in a more qualitative way, but also taking care of other parts of reproductive work, health, elderly, and so on and so forth. One more original discussion, for example, that makes sense today in France is the idea of a social security for alimentation. So instead of only thinking of the market as able to produce food, we could have, just as for education and health, a public service of food. Why not? So doing that is reducing the part, it's decommodifying, but not to move to the families. Not the idea that everyone should have its own garden and produce its own food, but on the contrary, to build a public service of that. Okay. For, I don't know, other questions, isolated workers, tu veux répondre sur ça? Ou c'est sur les aides-soignants? Okay, another very hard question. It's how to organize people that do not work in a large corporation, in a large factory. So that again, it's the idea that I think it's a fiction of the traditional Marxist or communist organizations that see the proletariat, the working class, as large companies, large factories. So what we already answer in the conclusion of the book you stressed, is that actually it's not how it happened, at least in some countries where development of capitalism starts with very small workshops, exactly as Fanny explained, for mass production during the pandemic. There's no way to have thousands of people working together in the same place because of COVID. So everyone works at his house and produce. That's what happened for the mask in 2019, but that's how capitalism was organized, at least in France, in Lyon, in the development of the textile industry. And it worked very well for the capitalism, but it also worked very well to organize parties, unions, defense, even if they are not working for the same capitalists in the same place, but yes, they are in the same suburbs of the cities and so on. And this is happening today, for example, for the sector of people working in the houses of elderly people to go help to clean the house, prepare meals, take a shower. There are unions that organize these people using some support from other sectors to start, but after that, depending on how well you can be recognized as a unionist and get money to take time for that. But it's possible, it happens, and thousands of people are organized in unions, even if each one is working separately in different houses of different persons and have to take the car every day a few times. So it's also a way it's been possible to do, to construct organizations, and everything helps us to organize largely now with a lot of technology that helps stick with people on specific sectors, on different topics. So there is no reason it would be harder now than in the 18th century, for example.
I just will speak about the idea of the alternative society and how, because there was a question about this. One of the things that we are talking about in this chapter, the conclusion of the book, is the idea of to buy reproductive work as a sector of activity for the unionists in reality. Because we are talking about French debate and in France in 2023 there was a big strike against the, how do you say, reforms
of the age of retirement.
Reforms about the age of retirement, and there was a big mobilization, and there was the idea to put the country on stop the 7th of March, and the unionists didn't think about the family strike as a kind of extension of the movement. And because they were thinking about the masculine sectors, that they have to be on the reproduction of the strike, and they weren't on this kind of reproduction, and it was a problem, and we didn't have a solution to buy a big strike. The idea of the alternative society and the reproductive work as a sector is to think, as we can say this in Argentina, for example, about the idea of community. But we are not talking about this in France, because there is another story. I think it could be hard to explain all of this now, but the proposition that we are doing is to think about the alliances that we can buy during the struggle, and it's a community organization in reality, but it's and as an historian, I saw in the sources in the 40s and 50s the idea of communities as an organization, an alternative organization who weren't public services and weren't commodification and all these things. But we don't talk about this now, but it's the idea to buy this kind of alliances with for example, with the other people. For example, when you are in the education, there is a the parents that can help and can buy something else. And in reality, is that we are doing where there is a kind of struggle. But in this moment, there is something else with building, and it's the idea it's a beginning of the idea of the alternative society. And you didn't talk about something important. I think it's the idea of habitat. How do you say this? Ecologic way of this kind of this way of meaning too, because it's the idea to when you are with the idea of reproductive work, you are not you are in other you are not in the idea of the productivity, and you are with the idea of the reproduction of something else who is not the workforce for the capital, and you can think about another organization. And I think it's important to say that too, that there is this kind of potential, and I think it's a way that we can find in a lot of struggle in the global south, for example, against neoliberalism and okay, I think it's good.
Yes, sure.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll take some questions. We have about 20 minutes. So I propose, are you okay with if we take maybe 3 at a time?
Yes, yes, sure.
It's okay? Okay, so 3 at a time. So I see 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then... So please state your name. And then...
Okay, so hi, I'm Nicolau. I'm from the Cyber Master. And I wanted to ask you a quick question, which is like, which union in France do you think is like the most involved, like in feminist, in this kind of feminist struggles? And if there is one clear actor, and maybe clarify why. Yeah, thank you. And very interesting presentation, by the way.
Hello, I'm Florian. Sorry to take the space for an organizational question, but I'm just a little bit confused by the structure of the talks, because in the slides, or like in our welcome meeting, it was said that we would have like 1 hour of debate with the whole audience, and now it seems to be like an interview style format. I don't want to criticize what you're doing, it's very interesting, but just to know what we can expect in the future, is it also going to be this format, or are we actually going to have a proper group discussion here?
Yeah, really interesting work you two are doing. I really liked how you highlighted the existing alternative within capitalism via reproductive work, and also the perspective of organizing within reproductive labor and using this as a strike format. However, I would like to ask if this might not be a contradiction again, because if we strike on reproductive labor, in some or reproductive work, in some extent we are also striking on the alternative, if it is already there, even though it is like secondary exploited, we are kind of striking on the alternative. So maybe we need to rethink this form of protest, or you have good reasoning why it's still efficient, but I see kind of a problematic contradiction for the working class there.
Let's take one more because there was only 2 for now. Please state your name.
Hello, thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions, very quick questions. Firstly, I don't know if you've talked about it, but how can we measure reproductive work? Is there a way? Have you talked about it? Have you qualitative or quantitative ways to do it? And also, you've talked about a reproductive working class. Is there a possibility to have a more intersectional way of thinking with regarding race, of course, and other types of oppression that we're facing here? My name is Sophie.
Thank you.
My name has been Louis.
Quick response, and then we'll have 3 more.
To answer about the unions, in France, there is 3 unions who are trying to do the feminist strike, but a little in reality, because there is a lot of debate inside these unions. I am talking about the unions from the social transformation, because there is other kind of unions who are not for the social transformation. And I am talking about, I don't know if you know, but CGT, FSU, SEIDEL, and they are trying to do that. and there is a process from the bottom to try to bite the feminist strike, but it's not easy because of the history and the R&D of what is an exemplary strike, for example, and in the history in France, the idea of the exemplary strike is a main strike in reality, and I think it's not easy for the feminists inside the unions to bite that, and there are a lot of discussion and tension and conflict with the feminist movement too, who is trying to do that, and we are in this situation, and there is not a lot of feminist strike as in Argentina, in Swiss, in other countries, in Spanish states. But it's a debate. It's a debate, and I think it's better each year. It's better. But the race, yeah, sure, and we will speak about it during one of class of lecture. But there is a big articulation of that, and we try to speak about this, about the idea of class, for example, working class, the building of the working class. Feminists were talking about the idea of we have to add housework in the working class, and we have to think the class with an intersectional perspective, as for example Selma James wrote a lot about this, and there is an international division of work, as you were talking about. We didn't have time to go inside of that, but in my book Mobilisé, I am talking a lot about this, because in reality the people of color, I don't know, it's in French we are.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Non, mais
Yeah, it's people of color is what is,
okay.
is the term that's used.
Okay. In French, we are talking about racialized people, and women are a big part of this reproductive work, and with the disqualification and all these things that we were talking about, and we have to think that too when we are talking about the alternative, and there is a big articulation. And about the question of the strike in the reproductive sector, I will. Je peux dire, mais. An important thing is to have the idea of the strike is not always the idea of stop always, stop all the thing, and stop working and put child or sick person alone. There is the idea to think in other way the work, and organize differently the work. You can stop, and you can think about a new organization of the work. And I think because it's the idea, the differences between reproduce workforce for the capital and reproduce life, for example. It's the idea of the differences between the two. When you are on strike, you are not reproducing workforce. You are on strike, but you have to reproduce the strike, and it's not the same reproductive work. It's precisely what we want to explain when we are talking about the idea of it's in self and itself. For itself and in itself. It's the idea of differences between the two things.
Yes, so it's clearly the idea that when you are on strike, the moment you work the more, because you need to address to other people, gather money, go in the streets, but in the same time ensure all you need to do to be able to free time to go in the streets. So a lot of repetitive work, of course. And it's a different way to think, in particular, alliances during the strike. To try to make it more concrete, it means that if you are a teacher and you want to go to strike, maybe in some neighborhoods, the best way to do the strike of the reproductive work of the teachers is not to take care of the children and say, we don't take them into the school today. So the parents have an issue and the employers of the parents have a strong issue. So that's a good idea to do in wealthy neighborhoods where people have jobs. Not too wealthy, because if they are too wealthy, they don't care, they have people at home to take care of the children, but wealthy enough so their job is important for the employer, or industrial places where it have an effect on the production of the parents as workers. But in other places, maybe on the contrary, the main idea is how we organize collectively with the parents to free time for the parents and the teachers to go demonstrate, for example, to ask for more money for the school where their children go. So it has different forms in different places, but thinking this way of what reproductive work means and how it's two things most of the time in the same time, so we can try to choose which we stop and which we don't stop, we think gives some light to all that. Yes.
Maybe 3 more questions, and if another point comes,
Yes.
What? No. Okay, you can add it at the next.
No, yes, just to measure. One other one, measure of reproductive work. So it's the topic of next week class. But the main idea is that if you measure it with money, you are strongly under measuring it by definition almost. So time is a better unit. Please to start.
And just quickly about the organization question, I forget who it was, but basically, I don't know, I'm replacing David for today, usually it will be David. I just checked his email, he told me 1 hour presentation, 15 minutes for the group, 10-15 minutes response, so that leaves about 45-50 minutes for the group exchange, because I made a mistake earlier, I said 20 minutes left, but I thought we finish at 4 o'clock, but actually we finish 4:15. Yes. So we'll have about 45 minutes of exchange, maybe 40 minutes, because I didn't do the best job keeping time, but more or less, I think that's what David planned. I don't know if that will be the standard for every seminar in the future, but those are my instructions for today. Yes,
just to answer, I think also the question was whether the discussion is just like with the professors as an interview style or between yourselves.
I don't have any information on that. Maybe for next week or maybe for future presentations. So sorry about that. Okay, 3 more questions. I see 1, 2, 3. Sorry, we'll get you next time. 1, 2, 3. Okay. State your name, please.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. My name is Supadet. I'm from Thailand. My question is with regard to aging society. I will be more on that later. May I reconfirm, ask for your opinion, also of you also, what would be the base or successful case of market-based policy to recompensate the reproductive work and also the non-market-based? Because I would like to spend a little bit more time, 2 minutes, on why I think this is the problem. In Thailand, if you disregard the developed economy and also in Southeast Asia, we are at the lowest of low of the birth rate. We are at 1.2 birth for women, and you need 2 to at least repopulate your country. I think another developing country is Ukraine also with 1, and Chile at 1.13. So it's a huge problem. We are getting old before we are getting rich. I ask you for like name an innovation from Thailand other than Muay Thai and Pad Thai. I don't think you. I don't know. And so we are in precarious position because like we cannot. For example, like, I have a fiance and we don't think about having children because both of us has to work because there are not enough money in the economy to recompensate us to be able to like, okay, I work and okay, she can do the reproductive work or take good care of our children. We cannot do that because we are not well off enough. So of course we have paid maternity leave, which is I think is the basis policy for almost every country to be able to somewhat recompensate the reproductive work. We have that, but people don't use it because of the cultural factor. If you take a leave, that means you are sacrificing your own career. If you're a manager, forget about your next promotion because that's not gonna happen if you take a break for like 6 months. Okay, so please, if you have any successful case, I would love to hear it very much. Thank you.
Maybe can we have like some sort of gender balance in the questions also because of
Wait, who did I say yes to?
Diana.
Okay. So yeah, let's try. We have a lot of interest, right, in questions. So let's try to maybe keep them a little bit condensed so we have more time.
I will ask like a short theoretical question and maybe more on personal opinion. Do you think that in the future it's possible that reproductive work can be fully recognized and compensated in the capitalistic economy? Because as we know, it's mostly focusing on gaining profits, and regarding the, for example, parental leaves and subsidies and childcare subsidies in this context, if it will be fully recognized in the future.
And who else did I see yes to? You, Red? Okay.
I forgot to tell my name.
Go ahead.
My name is Darina. Nice to meet you.
Hello, my name is Theo. One thing that always strikes me within these presentations is that a lot of these ideas are always focused on how to compensate care work, how to get women back into the labor market after they had a child. And I was always wondering why there's not a stronger emphasis on like working time reduction, for example. It hasn't come up like a single time throughout the entire presentation, and I think it's really important because in the end, what we gain by getting women back into work, obviously it makes I'm not against it, obviously, but we just try to gain more time, outsource the care work to public services, for example. This way commodify the work, make it more efficient, just to submit ourselves even more to capitalist exploitation. So I was wondering why working time reduction is not, there's not a stronger emphasis on it, and also to align maybe the feminist struggles with the degrowth as one central key argument of the degrowth movement. And yeah.
Thank you. Okay, that's 3. So, quick round of responses.
On aging society, so I think you very clearly state the argument that commodifying is choosing only a very small portion of population that earn enough to pay someone else to take care of the children if you decide to take the risk to make children. And by definition, it can't work on a large scale because you need to pay someone, so this person can't take care of his own children, and it's been explained very clearly how it's organized internationally, and migrations participate strongly into that. So what solution do we have? We don't have solutions. We try to look at what are the struggles that try to demand things and sometimes win a little bit, at least. So there are perspectives for doing things differently. And clearly, I think that's true historically, organizing children care on a large scale through public services is clearly a better way for society to free time to work. I try to answer at the same time this question. We define work not as waged work. So it's a different discussion to reduce work time. Usually the discussion is we want to reduce paid working time, so exploited working time. And if we define differently work, maybe we have to think of the question again. I'm not sure, I don't want to reduce also housework or other forms of reproductive work, reduce it. Good idea. In part, it's been reducing, at least in the north, for the last 40, 50 years. It's not enough to make it equivalent or very far from zero or equivalent between men and women, but it's been reducing because of its social organization, because also of technology and a lot of things that before were done in the house, mainly by women, are now produced by society in public services, but also by private corporations as dishwashers, transforming food a lot more. So when you purchase it, you don't have much work to do to cook it. You can cook very fast. It's not very good food, but it's another discussion. Or maybe it's the one you want to have, I don't know. I would say the main tension here I see is between degrowth as reducing the economy overall, or reducing the economy in its capitalist form. And I'm not sure it's exactly the same thing. So I'm not sure I want less public services in the same time I want less market. But maybe at some point public services also are something that participate to the destruction of the earth and so on and so forth, because you need transportation, you need large structures. But we can think of them differently, certainly, as for now. Yes, and we try not to have the discussion between, maybe it was in the first round of questions, women's participation to the workforce. So that's not what we do, because that's the wage workforce. So the graph we had with men don't care if they have children because they're still working exactly the same, but women do. That's because actually what is missing in the graph is housework that now they have to do, so they can't go back to work in the job market.
Just about the question from Darina, I don't think that reproductive work can be recognized in the capitalist economy. I think that what we can see since neoliberalism and the feminist neoliberal approach is that we can have a kind of elitist equality, which is a term from a sociologist from France, who called Sophie. There is equality for a few women from middle class and high class, and a large part of the women are on the precarity and all these things. And I think that there is just a part of reproductive work who can be recognized, but a little part, as we can see when we were talking about the pandemic, there was a lot of discussion about the idea to recognize the essential work and all these things, with a big mobilization of a lot of people to say that it's important and all these things, but they just add, I don't know, a little promotion, not a promotion, prime, compensation, but little, okay, little compensation, but and not all of the women. For example, there was a mobilization because there was a personnel from hospital who had this compensation, but you know, there is a lot of women who are working to do the property from the hospital, but it's sous-traitance. How can it's subcontract, and they didn't have the compensation, and they were mobilized to explain that it was really difficult for there too. And I think that with the system, as we know, we can just have a part, and it's just but we can have in the capitalism like we had in the 60s in France, social states with a lot of public services and all these things, but it's a short time because of the system and this organization.
Okay, let's try to get at least 2 more rounds. So who back here and more in the back? I missed somebody last time. Was it you? It's okay. Okay, 1. Who else in the back? No, nobody. Okay, in the front then. 2, and then okay. Start 1, 2, and then okay.
So maybe just quick interject.
Yeah.
You could try to some sort of gender balance, also no questions.
Well, anybody else have a question?
Just maybe to have some information.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, go ahead.
First of all, I think also maybe Ali, Sophia, could also respond or contest if you have like a response to also the answers that the presenters give. I will also will likely to know. But yeah, I have like maybe two questions related, and maybe one for the second presentation. The first, I think like housework is producing value, but isn't paid, and it is organized in a way that produces value. If I get it right. So if I understood right, one of the proposals of the book also is think reproductive labor for itself, and the goal is to appropriate, the actors need to appropriate this to perform and try to create a basis for a social alternative of metabolism. And I think this is a great idea. This kind of efforts to think that reproductive force is already organized, but organized differently. Not in a commodity form, but in other ways. But this things develops some questions. First of all, I think I would really think maybe this is a naive question, but is there really a real world force in our society that is outside of the circuit of capital, and is a very just direct question, and I think there is always some way to connect the reproductive force. And this is develops to my second question that...
No second question.
No?
Who else? I said, we're here with somebody here. Okay. Quick, please, because we only have... I'm sorry, but we only have 5 minutes left.
Okay. I'll try to be quick. Hello, my name is Diana. Thank you for the presentation. I understood from your last comment that in the end, the reproductive labor right is direct for a really small part, a really small group. There would be white women from the center that have enough money to deal with it. So this makes me think if there is any other structure that you thought about how to address this same problem, challenges for the biggest part of women that suffer with that. There are black women from periphery. Because when I think about we are going to talk about gender and feminist mobilization, we also address the specificities of it, of any group
of the society, and it's really difficult when we generalize and we think about women that are gonna receive the right of labor reproductive. So when we were constructing this project, did you also think about these specificities, and if it is any structure that you address in case from gender, color, and region that these women come from?
Thank you. And who was you? No, I said yes to you. And then was there anybody else with a question? One last one. Okay. So go ahead.
Mine is like I would like, maybe it's a question that will break the fourth wall, but I would like to know how hard it is to make research on these topics when your findings point in these topics that are on the border of our current system, and when your findings point like outwards. I think many of the answers to the questions people ask now are answers that we don't have because they come outside from the systems we have in place, etc. And if you choose to do your research, like earlier today, we were speaking about the gender gap, and like you can do this way, but you can also say, okay, I don't believe that making research through the gender gap is a good choice because I don't believe, etc. If you choose to do your research outside of this, for example, more in a critical way, how hard it is to find funding for this. Yeah.
And your name?
Leo.
And your name was? Kim. Okay, thank you. And then very quickly, and then we have maybe 5 last minutes to respond. Okay.
Yes, just a comment. I think a lot of these questions are answered in a book that I don't know if it's in English. Now, the book is Sostenibilidad de la Vida, like how to sustain life, if it makes sense. And basically it's a book that collects a lot of practices in the north of Argentina, and all these practices are actually a non-market response and non-market solution to this distribution of care work problem. Because of course, as you point, I mean, we have this problem as like middle class or whatever we are, but in the community, people have kids anyway, they have this problem and they solve it. That's not like the kids are dying right away. And I understand that in Argentina we have like a lot of history about the community centers and community, but that's basically what keeps us alive. So, yeah.
Thank you.
And there is 4 books in Argentina about feminist economic approach, and I think that we can put. I don't know if there is a place for the people from the joint seminar, and we can put a bibliography.
I can list the feminist economics lecture, so if you are not there.
And no, it's not easy to answer to your question because in reality we have to struggle, I think, and to have a class approach and an anti-racist approach, and we have to think about all these things in the same time and not forget all of this. I don't know how I can answer because. And we have to criticize that we are doing in reality, criticize the idea of the gender gap and all these things, and we are doing a difference between gender economics and feminist economics. I think it's the perspective that we have to think the difference between what we can do in the capitalist system and what we have to do for the equality. I don't know, but it's not the same way, and we have to think about all the organization of work and not only the wages work, and that it's what we are talking about. And I think that the feminist track approach allows this, and in France too, to think about all the not only about the wages work, but all the work. And but I don't know if I am answering to your question, but it's there is a lot to do, as you know, and but the question on academy. I don't know. Je sais pas trop comment.
For the funding, maybe.
Ah oui,
So in the US, it's not a good idea today. It's been on other moments, so it's also very heterogeneous, and maybe we have so much traductions and the constitution of social reproduction theory, because at some point it was easier in the US in the universities, and now it's very in the news. Everybody is hearing about, but because of the backlash. For us, mainly the strategy is to work without money, except that we have guaranteed positions in universities in France for now. For younger researchers, it's much harder. If you think of doing a PhD in feminist economics, maybe think again. Having a permanent position in the university is hard in general for everyone. For heterodox economists, much more, and for feminist heterodox economists, we'll see how we can do. But for us, it's much easier. So we have guaranteed money for research through our funding, and in addition, Fanny Gallot has a lot of fundings that she won. So we have a bit more of freedom on that side. That's great, but that's scarce. I don't know if I just one word about this idea of housework. Is it producing value or not? That's something we've been speaking a little bit this morning in the lecture with people again. But the idea I want to stress just 1 second is that yes, it produces value, benefits, plus value accumulation of capital if it's someone that is working for a company in the house of someone else, and then it's paid, it's waged work. And there is no doubt it produces value and plus value. But there are other economic forms of work and a recognition of work, and that's the idea, that you can have different ways of giving value, but it's not for a moral reason or material reason that it's important, so it produces value. No, that doesn't work like that. Or you spend time on it, so it produces value. It doesn't work like that neither. It's how the society organized to recognize or not value, or on the contrary, to remove any valuation of the work. And that's why all what we try to do is historically rooted. We try to see what is working to give more recognition to some activities, or on the contrary, remove the recognition it had already.
Thank you very much.